this section. In light of the fires, we've all been sort of reassessing everything and what's going on and how where we fit into all of this. And Wally has done a presentation that's very short, but I think very impactful, that fits in here about where we're going with our program. So I wanted Wally to do this and maybe occasionally, come on to our agendas and talk about some of how we fit into the picture here. So Wally, want to take it away?
Right. Well, the fires, as you all know, has generated a ton of finger pointing. And it's not like every finger doesn't have a point. And but I wanted to take a look through the lens of costs and see and there's a lot of data that have come out now. So this is all data driven. So let's go on to the next one, David. So what we know is that there has been an increase in temperature for 200 years, ever since industrialization started. And so it's been gradually for 200 years. So what? Okay, so what? Well, the so what is that when you heat something up, it messes with the weather. And it messes with the weather in very specific ways, that weather events become more extreme. And that means, like, for example, when it rains, it really rains. When there's a drought, there's really a drought. If it's cold, it's really cold. Really extreme weather events. And they last longer than they ever have in the past. And they occur more frequently in more places. So these are just verifiable facts, and just to lay a background to this. And in that case, that we also know that the heat's been increasing faster since the mid-1990s. I'll talk about that in a second. But the 2024 average was the highest in recorded history globally, and January 25 was the hottest January in recorded history. David, go on. So this is kind of personal for me. I wanted to just indulge myself for a second. I was a student at UCLA in the Bel Air fire of 1961. And I watched it from you all know the campus, UCLA, the top of Jan Steps, which is outside Royce Hall. And the bottom picture is about what I saw. I actually watched Bel Air on fire. I could see the flames at the ridge, and I could see the water bombs. The picture above that is Roscommere Road. And I lived in the valley at the time, and I used to take Roscommere Road to connecting to Bellagio Road, which is on the left. And so I personally experienced it in a funny sort of way, although my house didn't get burned or anything like it. It also was very high profile because celebrities like Kim Novak and Fred McMurray were in they had to water down their house, and they lost it and all this kind of thing. So this I want to use as the baseline in the discussion going forward. David, go ahead. So what we know is that it was about 6,000 acres. There were right around 500 houses that were destroyed. And by the way, it's not like there weren't fires all through history in California. I mean, there's fires here. I got it. But this one was especially extreme for the time, 1961. Almost 500 homes destroyed, as I said, a lot of the celebrities. And it cost in today's dollars, $265 million of damage. No one died, fortunately. And it lasted less than 2 days. It may even been 1 day. And it had a lot to do with the Santa Ana winds, which we don't know. The literature doesn't tell me what the wind speed was at the time, but Wikipedia tells me that it averages roughly 7 miles an hour per season. And if it's a bad day, and there's gusts of 60 miles an hour in some of the canyons. So somewhere in that range is what we could figure out what was going on in Bel Air in 1961. And the reason that they contained it so fast was that the winds died down. But this is the baseline we're going to use. Now, taking a look at the Palisades Eaton Canyon fires of January, there were 6 to 7 times broader, more acres and square miles burned, 28 times more structures. It cost 1,000 times more damage, 275 billion, high estimate. 24 people died. It took 2 weeks, so it was 7 times longer at least than the Bel Air fire, which was the previous extreme fire of high profile. And we know that the Santa Ana winds were over 100 miles per hour sustained. So this redefines what extreme is. And when I said that the heating of the environment causes more extreme more frequently and it lasts longer, here we can see the 60-year difference between what was extreme in 1961 and now we're considering extreme right now. David, go on. And to put this in sort of a context, this fire caused more damage than the entire state of California in 2020. And it was more than Hurricane Helene in the east, which cost only 250 billion as opposed to 275 billion. And California has a distinction of having the most expensive wildfires in US history. And we all remember Mendocino, Camp Fire, Woolsey, and all those combined only cost $30 billion of damage. So what we're looking at here is a massive impact compared to anything that's considered extreme before. Okay, next. Now, what's interesting about this, because as we say from the global heating, from the heating the environment, things happen more frequently. So within a week, maybe 10 days of the Palisades, the hurricane fires, there were atmospheric rivers in Northern California and Oregon that dumped unbelievable loads of rain on those areas. And that causes mudslides and all kinds of havoc, disrupts air travel, disrupts ground traffic. There was a so-called polar vortex across the Midwest and the Eastern US. And the picture is actually from New Hampshire, and it shows you what dense snow looks like. The visibility was very, very close to zero. And it turns out that the coast of Florida, of all places, had the beaches in the coast of Florida had 3 inches of snow on them and never snowed before. So that's the kind of stuff we're looking at here when the environment heats up. Oh, and I threw this one in, I liked it. 4 feet of snow in one day in northern Japan. There's pictures of these guys trying to shovel out of 4 feet of snow. It's pretty interesting. Okay, go on, Dave. Okay, so these are now a discussion of the cost to consumers. That's not to say, this is not the cost to people who lost homes. This is the cost to the rest of us in society who are just, are going to be impacted by these kinds of things that go on. So food costs are projected, there's only 4 categories, there's like 12 of these categories, but I didn't want to, you get the point. Food's going to be more expensive and for obvious reasons. And if anybody wants to talk about it, I can point out why the heat impacts the food supply chain. They're talking about 30–50% within 10 years. Taxes, of course, are going to go up. I mean, who pays for this? There was, I missed it. I didn't call it out on the previous slide, but I think the damage to the infrastructure alone and was like what, 850 million, wasn't it?
1050.
Really expensive. So taxes have to be raised to pay for that. And I know at the extreme edge, it seems a little maybe not feasible, but the military is gearing up for global disruptions because of water and food wars that they're expecting armed conflict in sometime in the next 10 years. This is going to get very severe.
And they've been doing hardening of facilities, raising things and such for over 20 years. And that's not stopping. So, I mean, they recognize this is the reality, whether folks want to go along with it or not. But
Barry's right. We've been on it, but not apparently effectively enough.
yeah.
So insurance, as we can imagine, there's maybe a $50 billion payout of and as you know, in places in Florida, you can't even get insurance anymore because of the hurricane threat at any price. And I'll just say before the fires, my home insurance went up 10% last year, just all on its own, because the insurance companies are really buckling. So we can all expect to pay more. And then there's one paper I got research that said that property value, they're talking about $1.5 trillion net property losses in the next 30 years, having to do with high cost of insurance and changes in consumer location, because everybody's trying to get out of the way of these terrible environmental weather, extreme weather. Okay, so it turns out there's a study that says the cost of extreme weather globally in a 20-year period was almost $3 trillion, which comes down to $16 million an hour.
My gosh.
Globally. And my sort of observation, I would say, it's an editorial, but this is not sustainable. Society cannot sustain these costs and remain the kind of society that we all grown up with. And the bad news is, really bad news, is that the temperatures are, since 1995, roughly, are increasing faster than they ever have before. And you can see in the graph on the right, that is a tracking of, the blue line is the average temperature globally, and the red line is the carbon dioxide that's in the air. So they track really closely. And if you want to talk about the causal connection between them, I can do that another time. Go ahead, Dave. So this is a really terrific, I like this a lot. It's a map, a graph. Where the top one shows the long range, the long-term 125-year history of the rate of heating. The bottom one is just the last 30 years. And you can see that this last 30 years, in 1995 on, has been disastrous. And what's happening is that the condition is worsening. And I think this is why policymakers are confused. It's worsening faster than it ever has in the history of this stuff. And it also suggests really, really rapid response to these things. One of my favorite targets is Caltrans, who takes them, they have sustainability grants. It takes them 1 year after they've announced it to give out the money. And it's like, you guys aren't getting it. It's really, really urgent. Pick up the pace. All right, go to the next one. This is the last one. So the conclusion is bringing it home. And Jackie said, putting the pieces together when we talked about this, and that's what we're going to try and do. We have a sustainability strategy. And we do the strategic work, and you guys, the cities, do the implementation. And so it's a land use transportation strategy. And we're looking at obviously getting zero emission, low energy consumption. The level of consumption of energy consumption is very important, because if you don't keep it low, like if you're driving a Tesla, I have another presentation I can do on this. If you're driving a Tesla, yeah, it may be zero emission, but you're using way too much electricity at the generation side, which means you're going to be on fossil fuels to get where you're going. So when we do obviously energy and water conservation through the Environmental Services Center. So when we talk to you about the micromobility strategy, and we talk about e-bike safety, when we're talking about the local travel network, and it's sort of slow on uptake. We're going to be talking to you about micromobility hubs, which I discussed in the previous. When there's slow uptake among the cities, there's a direct line between what these initiatives are and the fires in the Palisades. So you can say, let's not build in the hills. You can say Bass was out of town. The underlying thing here is, if the environment wasn't heating to the extent that it is, it wouldn't have been as extreme, and it would have happened, but it wouldn't have been as extreme. It wouldn't have lasted as long, and so forth. So what we're talking about when we're talking about these micromobility strategy initiatives, we're talking about you taking it seriously and going forward with it as fast as you possibly can. And then we have the development pattern, which is the complement to that. We're talking about 15-minute neighborhoods. We're talking about the internet, so that we can have internet access in your cities. Every one of you should have, every public place should have Wi-Fi outside for internet, because the digital economy is a way we can cut down on traffic demand, and that gets into the South Bay fiber network. So the bottom line to all this is, we want to increase proximity between home and destinations. We want to make things where you're going to be really close together. And we want you to drive only what you need, which is you don't drive a Tesla to go to the 7-Eleven. So that's what we're trying to do, is the
What
cost.
if the neighbors see you driving something else?
All the better.
Shocking.
And obviously what we do in the South Bay isn't going to change global trends, but this is also a demonstration. We know that we want to get Van Allen to pay attention. We want to get Newsom's administration, although they're build, baby, build. But we're trying to do a demonstration here that can be replicated and have a bigger impact than just we are doing. But when the cities don't implement stuff, that's not much of a demonstration. So this is my pitch to connecting these dots. Try your best to do this when it comes in front of you. Questions?
Comments? Anything?
So is this going to be available on our website?
Actually going to keep it to myself, and I think
No, it'll be in this meeting notes, but also maybe we can put it, if we have a client.
Well,
page,
because
put it
I
there.
just remember, it was like a year ago, or maybe it was before COVID, you did a similar thing. And I just remember thinking, wow, we've got to do something now. But I think we have to get that message out.
thanks, Brett. You're the only person I know with a memory of these things. I don't even remember it, so thank you.
Oh, and
No, it's a
it emphasizes the urgency. And one of the things in terms of cost to the consumer, the air quality and the smoke that just, permeates long distances. I mean, that's a real biggie.
Well, and getting rid of the charred remains, which has become a big political issue.
And I was given a tour of the Eaton fire by a sheriff, and the sheriff said that what we haven't seen yet are the subsequent deaths, like after the World Trade Center, what got into their lungs is going to cause the first responders to have.
And all
more
those
deaths.
chemicals involved in, all the building products that went up in smoke, literally. So, I mean, I just think, you should take that message on the road.
I agree with you. I mean, Jackie and I talked about that and we feel that we're not honest enough with the board about what we know. And this is a step. I got a couple of other presentations behind this they're all data driven. It's not politics. This is just.
Would you rather have this at a board meeting than at the steering committee? I mean, we
Oh,
should.
both.
I'll go on the street corner if you want.
Yeah, really.
No, and also you could do it at if you want to do it at your council meetings, we can also support that.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line, and I can't ever say it because Jackie says everybody says it's doom and gloom, but society is not going to be the same. I have a grandson. It's hard to believe. And he has no future. I mean, 30 years from now, it really is gonna be a mess and conflict and all kind of stuff.
So I was listening to, on Hidden Brain, they had, which those are always fascinating, on this very topic of how do you deal with a topic like this that's so negative. And the presenter was a professor in environmental studies who had to shift her study to the psychology of it because her own students were burning out and falling apart because they're like, good God, what's the use?
What's the
And
word?
literally, people have been killing themselves because they see there's no point. And so she said, we have to reframe this to, of course, this is bad. Of course, you can't fix it yourself. And of course, there are things you can do. So, if we don't have that piece of it that, okay, yes, we have a terrible problem. Now, here are some things that you can do.
But that's
And there are things that we can.
done enough. No.
We tried to, Barry, to your point, exactly. We tried to show that, and all of this stuff here is data driven. All of this is data, not aggregate data from the census. This is all stuff from our projects that have generated data, that these came out of that. So this is not somebody's crazy idea like Michael Friedman who wants to close the Marina Freeway, for God's sake. I think he has a stone dream in the middle of the night or something. And I'm
Lighter, isn't it?
back on coffee. But this stuff is all data driven, and Barry is right. It's about not only what we can do, it's what we are doing. And so we just want to get more traction on it.
Well, we'll put it up on our website
Well,
and we'll
couldn't-
also, you go to council meetings if you want.
Well, couldn't we even have them on the General Assembly agenda? I mean, because that's a wide of public participation.